The person who seek all the applause from outside at the happiness in another's keeping. Dale Carnegie. Good morning to radio listeners from here and around the world. I'm Stefan Desjardins. You're welcome to Breakfast with the Rabbits here on the PJD 1300 AM, Plaza 21. Good morning to you, Mr. Don. Well, I just want to remind you that we do not entertain call, but you can always send your comments at breakfastwiththerabbit@gmail.com. breakfastwiththerabbit@gmail.com. Well, a knighthood or damehood, it is the female equivalent of knighthood, damehood, is one of the highest honor an individual in the kingdom can achieve. Well, with the past centuries, knighthood used to be awarded solely to military merit. Today, it is recognized significant contribution to national or community life. Recipients today range from actor to scientist and from school head teacher to industrial. In the UK, for example, foreign citizens occasionally receive honorary knighthood. They are not dubbed and they do not use the style sir or lady. Well, I'm having a conversation with the such recipient, and I should say lady, Suzette Burton. What a privilege and honor. Today I want to say good morning to you and welcome to the program for a second time. Once again, thank you for accepting our invitation.
Good morning, Stefan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. How are you doing? How has it been doing for you? I mean, from Suzette to Lady Moses Burton.
Well, I'm still Suzette. I see myself just as Suzette, I'm still a mother. That's my greatest achievement, I think, in this life. Because of the numerous awards I've received for the work that I've done, in HIV and, in fact, in the community, throughout my life, I have no choice but to acknowledge, and respond in kind with humility first and foremost, gratitude and a sense of appreciation and gratefulness to God for having given me the strength to be who I am, and to do the things that I do. But it's been pretty good to be me.
Should I believe you saying that from Suzette to lady? Come on, be honest.
No, things that actually, I suppose it's a little known fact about me, but things that put me in the spotlight or bring attention to me actually embarrass me. I would much rather, in the sense that I've never been somebody who took compliments very well. Not as in, if you pay me a compliment, I won't acknowledge it and say thank you, but I get, almost kind of flustered. You could see my cheeks starting to get maybe a little bit red, probably the way that they look now. But I guess it's just me, and it's how I'm made up. I really would rather just do things I see things that need to be done, and I get it done. And I do it for no other reason other than I like to see things done, I don't like to see things undone. I don't like to see people in trouble. I don't like to see people in need. I may not be the richest person in the world. I'm not even rich, period, but I know that I'm a lot more fortunate than others. And so if I see somebody who really is in need of something at a given point in time, where I am at, where our paths cross, because your paths don't always cross people, but I've always believed that when other people cross your path, depending on at what stage you are at, because sometimes we're not even ourselves able to deal and to cope with our own situation, much less anybody else's situation. But I've always felt that if I have the strength and the ability and the intelligence or the know-how or whatever it is, to be able to do something to make somebody else's life different, maybe just a little bit better, if even not over the long term, but in that instant, then it's my, God-given duty to have to do it, so.
Well, that begged me to beg this question. Yesterday I was talking to one of my friends, and I want to say good morning to Mr. Lambert. And he asked me, Stefan, who are you having tomorrow? I said, I'm having one of your country person. And without hesitation, the guy said, oh, you're having Suzette. I said, how do you know? So by him saying that, how can you say that you don't like his spotlight and you don't want to be complimented for being done? It looks like people knows already what you've been doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I live in the spotlight, but I don't necessarily have to like it. Yeah, when I say I don't like in the sense that it's not something that I'm comfortable with, but it's something that I've learned to live with over the years, simply because that's where my path in life has taken me. I've gone from being a graphic artist who's pretty much behind the scenes of things, to now, holding a government position, managing government's HIV program for over 10 years. That has really sort of put me in the spotlight with the whole HIV program. And even before that, when I volunteered and did work with St.Martin Pride, exactly, where I was the when I was the vice president of St. Pride.
What dragged you from environmental awareness program to HIV awareness program?
Well, actually, I've involved in HIV. Even before I came to St. Martin, my first encounter with HIV was back in Trinidad in 1988, when a very close friend of mine died from AIDS. And it was so shocking in the sense, it was a very sort of close-knit group of us. It was about 7 of us, 3 couples, and he was the only single person. But we did a lot of things together. We played mass together. I used to build costumes and that kind of thing in Trinidad. And then shortly after Carnival in 1988, he became very sick, and we couldn't figure out, what it was. And then having seen him go through such inhumane treatment at the hospital, if it weren't for the 6 of us, he wouldn't have even had a meal or been changed or have fresh clothing or nothing, because the staff wouldn't deal with, and to see that, being done to somebody that you love and care about, it is a life-changing experience. And, so ever since then, I've always been involved, with HIV work. But like I said, it's just who I am. I can't see things that need to be done and don't respond if I'm in a position to be able to respond. So at the time, actually, when we met, I was already working with the St.Martin AIDS Foundation, but, kind of low-key in the background where I kind of like to be. And so it was the same thing when Solange and they started St.Martin Pride, and Solange and I have been, great friends for a long time. And, she asked me to get involved. I said, sure. And then I was also at the time just starting to get involved in Carnival here. A friend of mine asked me through my job to come and do some stuff with the Carnival Foundation. And then that kind of blossomed and mushroomed. And so I was always doing all of those things kind of all at once. People used to ask me where I found the time in the day to do so many different things, but because everything was, I guess, a bit more low-keyed, and I didn't necessarily have the lead role in anything, I was,
Wow. I know in our second segment program, we're going to talk about your work as a program manager, but right now I just want people to know who's this lady that been knighthood, from environmental stuff to HIV. Tell me, Suzette, if I'm wrong, you were instrumental to the logo of Pride Foundation, I believe.
Yeah, that was like I said, I came to St. Martin as a graphic artist. Actually, many of the logos are even still in use now. Were logos that I designed as part of my work. The Pride Foundation logo is one. I designed that. And I remember when I was designing that, it was a really hard sell, because I wanted people to understand that St. Martin Pride was exactly that, love for St. Martin. And I felt the best way to express that visually was using sign language. And so that's the symbol that is the St. Martin Pride logo is actually the hand signing symbol for I love you. And people always used to tell me I was a bit ahead of my time in terms of my design. I've always been known for design things that people quite get. And somewhere down the line, then they're like, oh, that makes sense. Because it was a little bit of a hard sell, but I think she got it across. Like, listen, what better way? Because people wanted to see the traditional Latin map. And anybody could put a Martin map on something and throw St. Martin Pride around it. And people to always look at visual identity and what's, either what, or why choose that symbol, or why choose that font, choose that, it makes it more interesting and makes it, longer lasting, I think, and then of course I use the red and the blue and the white. So I did design that logo. In fact, when I came in, I was talking to Don, and he realized that the stickers behind his head, I also designed those for him years ago, and he didn't even remember. He was like, yeah?
How do you feel? What do you feel? Do you feel yourself blessed or lucky?
Oh, I am so blessed. I have wonderful parents, a strong family circle, the best daughter anybody could ask for. I wake up every day, and the first thing I do, even before I open my eyes, is thank God for a new day. And for all of the blessings that he has heaped on me. If I could have imagined my life, it wouldn't have been this. And I used to imagine my life as a kid, and I think I just saw myself being a wife and a mother. That was it. I didn't have any career aspirations. I think at one point I told my mother when I was about 6 or 7, I wanted to be a flight attendant. In those days we used to call it air hostess. And my mother was mortified. She was like, what? No child of mine is going to be a glorified waitress. And you can imagine how a 6-year-old felt, right? I was like, oh, well, I guess I won't be an air hostess. And then I thought, you know what? I think I would just be, I want to be somebody's mother. I want to be somebody's wife. And that was it for my aspirations, and I look back on my life. I just turned 35 a few weeks ago. Thanks. There are some things that I had
Are you still a good mother, a good husband, a good wife?
Well, the wife thing has kind of fallen by the wayside, but through no fault of mine. If your husband leaves you, there's nothing you could do about that.
I'm sorry I asked you down the head.
No, that's okay. That's quite all right.
Do you feel when I know you travel within your work and your nightwood, damewood now, how do you feel to be called St. Martin Trinidadian? I know on the paper you St. Martin, gosh.
Yeah,
Do you really inside? Tell me. I'm sure my brother, Local James, is listening.
Yeah, that's, and that's a tough one, because I'm actually in a situation, because because my heart's here. This is where my heart is. This is the place that, the thing is, you can't help where you're born. You're born wherever you're born. And you don't always have an opportunity where you can choose your home. Some people, they're just born there, and through circumstances, your home is where you're born and you live, and as an adult, you don't necessarily have a choice. It's, and then some of us have a choice, and we make a choice to make a home, to call somewhere else a home. We still hold on to our roots. I mean, your roots that's who makes you. That's what has made you and fashioned you and the thing, but I find myself I'll tell you what usually happens to me. I go back to that because that's where all my family is. And by the time I'm there, if it's more than a week, I start to be like, okay, it's time to go home now. And I have childhood friends who are like, what do you mean it's time to go home now? This is home. And I'm like, well, not really. Yeah, I mean, I've spent the last 23 years, which is the better part of my adult life, in St. Martin. I didn't come here seeking asylum or as a refugee. I made a conscious decision. And the thing is, when I came here, it was to pick up a job for 2 years. It's been 23 years. So I made a home for myself. I didn't plan on it, but I've also made a name for myself. I'm comfortable here. It doesn't matter where I go in the world for work, for vacation. After a certain time, it's like, okay, folks, it's time to go back home and feel like, oh, where's that Trinidad? It's St. Martin.
Thank you, Lady Moses Burton. We're going to go to our first break. When we come back, we talk about your work with it. Stay tuned.
This is the voice of St. Martin, PJD2, 1300 AM, broadcasting from Plaza 21, Phillipsburg, St. Martin.
We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. It is everyone's concern. We should all be actively involved, particularly the youth of St. Martin, like me, who will inherit whatever environment we leave behind. They must make it clear to the governor and island executive and legislative branches that sustainability is essential to the security of our people. Let's make every day Earth Day.
There's a new spirit in the air. It's called ecotourism. We urge you to caution your clients and friends not to remove or overturn a stone, pick flowers, not to break slips from trees or plants, not to disturb nesting birds, or touch the coral and shells. If we encourage one to pick souvenirs, thousands will. Consequently, there will be none left for others to enjoy. Stay on the approved tracks and treat our scenic and diverse environment responsibly. Do not support any unsustainable development and preserve St. Martin. This message was brought to you by Voice of St. Martin Radio Network.
Princess Juliana International Airport, PJIA, an ultra-modern airport offering you a warm and efficient welcome. From the breathtaking landing to the easy flow of passengers, PJIA has a spacious, clean, and traveler-friendly terminal with great food and excellent duty-free shopping. PJIA, a leader in Caribbean aviation with daily connections to all major Caribbean destinations and major cities within the USA, Canada, Europe, and Latin America. PJIA, your gateway to paradise.
Welcome to the program. If you're just tuning in, this is Breakfast with the Roberts, and my guest this morning is a lady, Mrs. Burton, and I'm Stefan Robert, of course. We're talking about success from another side to, of course, St. Martin. So, if I may, Suzette, I know you, how did you, number one, before we get to this, how did you get to the government's program? How did you, because it was a vacancy, or?
Yeah, like I said, I'd been working with the AIDS Foundation since about 91, 92. And back in 2000, we'd started having discussions as the AIDS Foundation with the government about looking at the division of tasks, and the foundation wanted focus primarily on prevention. And then with the assistance of UNAIDS, they came in with the government and developed a 5-year strategic plan. And I'd been very involved in that process as a representative. I was the secretary of the AIDS Foundation at the time. The then director, who's now Secretary General, Urine Whiter, when after the process was finished and they needed to bring on, people to, a team was identified to manage government's response, because government had started taking steps towards implementing a multi-sectoral response to HIV, much like, the rest of the Caribbean and the rest of the world was doing at that time. And Urine asked me to interview for the position of manager, and I thought, well, why would I even do that? This is just something that I do kind of on the side, voluntary. I'm really much more involved in carnival and in environmental stuff, and running my own business. At the time, I had my own business with my husband, and she said, no, but I think you would be perfect. I'm like, okay, fine. Let me, pull together a resume. And I went home and I looked at my resume, and all it had on it was, my entire career as an artist. And I remember looking at my husband thinking, I have to redo this thing. And then as I started pulling bits and pieces of the things that I had done with HIV, I suddenly had a 6-page HIV-only resume. And I mean, I was floored. I did not realize that I had done so much in HIV over the years, and because I'd started working more regionally with some regional organizations who worked primarily with people living with HIV. I'd already started attending some of the international conferences, working with a lot of my work was focused on working with groups of people living with HIV, And I had this 6-page resume that, even floored me. And so, of course, I submitted it, went to the interview, and then I got the position. And that really sort of shifted sort of the balance of my life as I knew it, and headed me down a completely different career path than what I would have thought.
You've been successful, I can tell you.
Yeah, that's why when you ask me if I'm blessed or lucky, it's not that I don't believe in luck, but I believe we make our luck. If you want things to happen, you have to make it happen. If you sit there and think, it's going to come, it's not going to come to you. If you want it, you go and get it. It's the kind of person I am,
Good. Lady Moses, tell me, the managerial position within the HIV program, why was it just for you to just create awareness, or it was just you to be part of the regional, international, even what we're going to be talking about, the White House visit, all this stuff?
No, it was actually multifaceted. I think first and foremost, it was to define what St. Martin's response to HIV would be, based on what our actual what the actual situation was here. And because at the time, and still to some degree today, we didn't have all of the capacity inherent here, whether it was human capacity, financial capacity, technical capacity. And so part of defining that response also entailed looking at where we could get support for different components based on where we needed support. And so a lot of what, I've fashioned and molded over the years has been based on greater collaborations. There's a saying that no man is an island, and two heads are better than one. And so and that has kind of always been my mantra, so to speak. And I never get to the point where it's too many cooks spoil the broth, because that is also true. So I've always tried to find a balance between looking at where do we need to get support for what issue, how best can we get that support, and how better do we position ourselves as a country, even before we were a country, to get that support. And that has always been sort of what has driven me, and I've had to find the balance between profiling St. Martin and by extension, our epidemic, and not just the bad things about it, but the good things about it. The fact that at present we have probably the best treatment program in the region, for people living with HIV. But how do I balance that? And then how do I also balance that against the need for me as the program manager to actually be here, in country, so that to get more people involved in the response, which was my primary responsibility, ensuring that we have a multi-sectoral response, that people understand that though HIV is a disease, it is actually a developmental problem. It impacts us not only in our health sector, but it has significant impacts on our economy, on our tourism sector, on our education, and a broad spectrum. It impacts us right across the board. And if we don't want to find ourselves in the situation that some southern African countries find themselves with an epidemic that's raging out of control, as high as 33% of the population infected with HIV, whole
Not too far from the
villages.
Caribbean, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Whole villages and communities of kids who are what you call AIDS orphans. They've lost both parents. Imbalanced societies. You have whole communities in some of the southern African countries that are imbalanced because the grandparents who should be enjoying, the latter part of their life, retirement, are now raising their grandkids because the parents have died. And if we don't want to find ourselves as a small territory in that position, then we need to be aggressive, and we need to ensure that everybody understands what their role is.
Thank you. I know I did some research yesterday, and that the South Africa is 60% and the Caribbean 55%. But I want to know the state of our public opinion here on HIV on St. Martin, because you talk about St. Martin response. Okay, once an issue marked by great fear of misconception, are we still much higher level of confusion, misperception, and division in public opinion when it comes to HIV or not?
I think compared to some other countries, we're doing much better, way much better. The levels of stigma and discrimination on St. Martin are relatively low. The levels of knowledge are relatively high, but we do still have some worrying. And actually, I was in a workshop 2 days ago, and we presented the results from an assessment that we had done in the workforce. So we did a small survey among government workers, private sector workers, and then we also tried to get some people who were unemployed, etc., and from a lower socioeconomic bracket as well, to get an idea of the knowledge base where it comes HIV. And for the most part, the level of knowledge was pretty high. People knew, definitively and answered correctly what were the methods of transmission. But there were still some pockets that gave us cause for concern. There's still too many people who seem to think that you can still get HIV from a mosquito.
Drinking these glasses.
Yeah, or sharing food or that kind of, but not alarmingly high. Just enough to, like I say, for me as the program manager, to cause concern to say, well, I think we need to do a bit more education, a bit more awareness with people, so that we don't run the risk of, because that's the thing with HIV, if you could lay yourself into complacency. People think, oh, well, there's medication and there's treatment now, so we don't have to work. No, it's, that's a false sense of
what about the
complacency and hope, let's say.
One of the complacencies is that people believe that Magic Jackson has been cured.
No, he's not cured, but he's doing exactly what every single person with HIV needs to do. First, you need to know your status. And you can only know your status by going to get that test. You can't know it by looking at somebody, by, oh, well, that person clean, they dress well, that's all crap. You need to go and get the test. You know that you're in long-term relationships to get the, to test it. Because then they tell you, yeah, well, I only have one partner. And okay, fine, you might have one partner, but are you sure your partner has one partner? And it's not that I'm trying to make any casting aspersions on anybody, but that's the reality, because I see the reality. I see the people who come into, this support group, and I hear the stories of, women and men who thought that their partner was faithful, and their partner wasn't faithful, and some of these women are in long-term relationships, married, X number of years, children, whatever, and it's devastating. So it's, then people bring up this, but then if I tell my husband, or if I tell my husband, they think I don't trust them. Well, okay, then don't tell them, but you go and get your test every year just to be sure. I mean, why not err on the side of caution? If, as part of your physical health regimen every year you go to a physical, HIV test.
Terry, Ms. Burton, has there been a concern when it comes to, I know years ago you shared the same office as the actual Minister of Health. Is there a concern when it comes to health policy or insurance towards somebody who's battling with HIV positivity?
Yeah, actually, this seems to be a discussion that's coming back on the table repeatedly. I just had a meeting recently with the president of the St.Martin Insurance Brokers Association, and he and I are going to begin looking at, because with insurance, it's all about the bottom line and the dollars. And the rest of the region, and in fact the rest of the world, as far as insurance goes, is really looking at revamping and amending their policies. Apart from the fact that their policies are discriminatory, the policies were developed, adapted, let's say, back in the early onset of the epidemic, when HIV really was a terminal illness. HIV is now a chronically manageable disease, like any other chronically manageable disease, such as diabetes, hypertension, etc. And so I think it's really high time, way past time actually, for the insurance industry to get up to speed with the times. The science is there, categorically, that this is a treatable and very preventable disease, and actually that what we now say is that treatment is prevention, because for all the Magic Johnsons out there who are on treatment and who do have their viral load under control and strong immune systems, the risk of them transmitting HIV to anybody else is next to none, and that has a great role to play in transmission and in prevention, because in order not to get HIV mustn't be present. Okay, so two HIV negative people cannot pass HIV on to one another. And an HIV positive person can only pass HIV on to an HIV negative person or to another HIV positive person if their viral load, if the state of their infection is such that it allows that. And this is getting into really complicated.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Let me try to put it more simply. Not every stage of HIV infection is infectious. Yeah, so it's like chicken pox. You know that I think everybody knows that there's some stages of chicken pox that are more contagious than others. Right. It's the same thing. A person living with HIV who's on treatment and has their viral load under control. What the treatment does is two things. It simultaneously boosts and strengthens your immune system so that the individual can fight diseases, and it also suppresses the reproduction of the virus. So that the virus, it's not that it's not reproducing anymore, but it's not reproducing at the massive rate that it would normally reproduce.
Okay. I want you to just different way of asking this. Is it the SVB or the medical center?
SVB.
Those public health, do they help those people?
Yeah, of course.
Besides the foundation?
No, of course. SVB does not discriminate in its practices. Okay. So whether you have HIV, whether you have congenital heart failure, diabetes, hypertension, it doesn't matter. You're covered by SVB. And the introduction of the new National Health Insurance System will be the same thing. You won't lose those benefits.
Sometimes, I know we're going to go to a break, but sometimes when you get nominated, you get awarded by NET, we don't know who nominated you. Can I ask you for World Ambassador of Health representing St.Martin? Maybe CARICOM, you can be somebody for CARICOM. But we're going to be talking about that when we come back.
Okay, sure.
This is the voice of St. Martin, PJD2, 1300 AM, broadcasting from Plaza 21, Phillipsburg, St. Martin.
Natural beauty, Tell no I. Natural beauty, Tell no I. Never been someone shy until I seen your eyes. Still I had to try. Yeah. Oh, yes. Let me get my words right and then approach you. Man, I'll treat you like a man. GEBE, the power to serve your electricity and water company. Oh.
Come rain or shine, or even hurricanes, the GEBE team is always working to keep your light and your water running. GEBE has put more than 90% of its high-tension lines on the ground to be able to restore electricity after a storm even sooner. Learn ways that you can prepare your home to keep your family safe at GEBE Storm Center at www.nvgebe.com.
GEBE, the power producer, electricity and water company. Oh, GEBE, the power to serve your electricity and water company. Oh.
We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. It is everyone's concern. We should all be actively involved, particularly the youth of St. Martin, like me, who will inherit whatever environment we leave behind. They must make it clear to the governor and island executive and legislative branches that sustainability is essential to the security of our people. Let's make every day Earth Day.
Princess Juliana International Airport, PIA, an ultra-modern airport offering you a warm and efficient welcome. From the breathtaking landing to the easy flow of passengers, PJA has a spacious, clean, and traveler-friendly terminal with great food and excellent duty-free shopping. PJIA, complete Caribbean daily connections to all major destinations and major cities within the USA, Canada, Europe, and Latin America. PJIA, your gateway to paradise.
Good morning once again. This is Breakfast with the Rabbit. Wherever you are, the breakfast on me. Well, my guest this morning, if you just get in, is Lady Suzette Burton. She's the Island St.Martin HIV program manager, and she's here with us and discussing her. I don't call it expert, but it's an achievement. HIV AIDS Foundation, you've been promoting that. You are the torch bearer, in English. Yeah. Now, my question is going to be, you've been so successful. Let's say the Prime Minister, for example, I know you guys do, can just take you from that program and say, you know what, I want you to represent St. Martin within CARCOM. What we say, to promote the
Yes, she could do that.
Yeah. Okay, anyway.
She could do that.
President conferences from within the AIDS Foundation program or within your job, everything. That lead you to the White House. No, this is something that is not. What was your impression?
Wow. I think for the first time. This has been quite a year, This year, the last year, my 44th year of life, I think will probably go down as my most significant year. I became, exactly. I became a Dutch citizen. I became a homeowner for the first time, overcoming numerous obstacles on that path. I received the PANCAP Regional Award for Excellence in HIV. And then, the Royal Decoration came in April, and then in June, lo and behold, there was an invitation from the President of the United States. I thought, what? I thought, no, this is some hoax. I'm like, this is a heart. Why would these, people, and why I thought it was a hoax was because in the RSVP, they asked you for so much personal information, social security number, this, that, and I thought, why do these, people who, exactly, who give you, all these hoax things, you want $1 million, but you have to send them 20,000, to be able to get the $1 million and all these foolish things. This is just ridiculous. Why would somebody, look at what work that I've been doing with the international conference, pull bits and pieces off, from the web and send me an invitation from the President of the United States. That's just crazy. And then I decided to talk to us, send it on to a friend who I know actually works at the White House. And he was like, girl, are you crazy? That is a real invitation. You have it. I'm like, what? And it was just, utter pandemonium in my house. My daughter was with me, and we both started screaming. And I was like, oh my God, this is just, no, I'm tearing up all over again thinking about it. And she ran to call my mother, and by the time she's calling my mother, I'm now hyperventilating because, the enormity of what I was actually looking at, that I was actually looking at an invitation addressed to me from President Barack Obama was just, I couldn't even comprehend that I had done anything that even remotely, warranted that, and it was in fact a very real invitation. And then, so I sent off, my daughter actually sent off the RSVP with the information that they wanted, and then, we got back the additional response with all the directions, and that's when it started becoming much, with all the directions, all the things you had to do, what you couldn't do, what you could, and a whole list of instructions. And then I just kind of went through the next, I think, 2 weeks in a little bit of a daze, and we started panicking, like, oh my God, what was I going to wear? What was this thing going to be like? And then it got to the day, and I was so nervous, I was nervous, I was overwhelmed. And then we got there because it was, a group of us who had been invited. And we got there, and then you go through, I think, about 5 different security checkpoints at the White House, And it's not the administrative wing of the White House. It's the private wing. It was the East Wing, which is, the private residences,
You
So it was
on your Facebook, we all know that.
Yeah. No, because, because we go to the White House meetings, but it's always in the West Wing, where they have the administrative offices. But this was different. This was, I think I've only ever seen the East Wing in, there's a Christmas special that HGTV does every year. That I think the First Lady hosts, where she decorates the East Wing, because that's their sort of living quarters. And so this was just surreal, it really was surreal. And I'm like going through this thing almost in a daze, and then we knew that he was going to address us at some point during the day. And what we didn't expect was for him to actually, and of course he comes into the room with all the Secret Service people and whatnot. And we didn't expect that he would actually come and greet us. I think, and that's where it just went, and he comes directly to me and he shakes my hand and he says, thank you so much for, the work that you've done and for the great work you've done. And I just thought, I don't know how I didn't pass out, it sounds silly, but it was just, really, really awe-inspiring to hear him speak, to see him up close, and in person. And that would have been enough for me. But to have actually had the opportunity, to shake his hand, speak to him, look at him in his face, wow, that was just, I think that was the crowning moment of my existence,
Good. Now, come back to the management. That's good. Congratulations. Honestly, I wanted to say congratulations on your demo, and for you to be able to go to White House from the Canigere Street. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
From your office in Canigere Street to go to White House. I'm just happy. Any comment, my buddy?
Excitement in Suzette. It sounded like, meeting Barack Obama was one of the greatest things that ever happened to you. And I think it would be to me too. Because that's the kind of impact that he has on the world, especially to us as colored folks.
Thank you very much, Don. Now, you say you work with the organization or with the government for 22 years.
No, not for 22 years, since 2002. 10 years.
10 years. Oh, 10 years. It's not bad.
No, I've lived in St. Martin for 23 years.
Oh, okay. It's so beautiful. You did a great thing, honestly. Demo, that's very important to me because I know the value of demo. Okay. And you went to White House. Are you ready to pass on the torch?
I have been ready to pass the torch. You have no idea how, I have been.
You're ready too. You are your wife.
I have been trying to pass on the torch for quite a while now. But I'm ready to. Well, I'm ready to pass on the torch now. And I've already had discussions. I've already been in discussions about what my next career move is. And yes, I am. Let me maybe use breakfast with the Roberts to announce that I am making a career move.
That's good. That's fun.
And the plans are in the works for that move. Couple of people working behind the scenes, getting things ready. But I need to do it for me. Because I need, the kind of person I am, I have to have a challenge. And I need to challenge my mind. I'm only 45, in the bigger scheme of things. I have, let's say, probably another 20 years of working, still left in me. And I think that everything that I have done so far up until this point has probably led me to what my next step is. And I'm not going to say what it is, but I know what it is. Suggest it.
Goodwill ambassador. Or maybe try to help St. Martin go through
That's kind of close.
Okay, that's
kind of close. Kind of close.
Because the reason why I asked that question, Suzette, is very important. Sometimes here, even though you said it earlier on our program, like we say in Africa, a piece of wood in a river doesn't become water. You love St. Martin like me. We made our second home, but we still know where we come from, honestly. And here, people tend to say, well, you've been there too long, why don't we train a local sometime? That's why my question comes in.
Yeah.
Why don't we pass the torch?
I have been, trust me, I have been looking for somebody to train, to pass this on to, and I think people, and remember I mentioned earlier about complacency, people have gotten too complacent. They're like, oh, Moses there, we're taken care of. But yeah, but it's, there's something else out there for me that I need to move to now, and it's different from when I moved into this position. I didn't see this coming, but I see the next thing coming, and now I'm getting, a little bit antsy, and I want to make the next move. And like I had a conversation with the Prime Minister, but I want to do it responsibly. I don't just want to leave the program with a void. But my need for new challenges and to do things and to do the next set of things that I feel I'm best placed to do, I will leave a void if nobody is willing to pick it up. Because I also can't stymie myself and stunt my own growth and development, So, yeah.
That's good. Because as we head toward the end of the program, two questions that I need to ask. Every year, you guys collect zillions of money from Scotiabank, for example. What do you do with it?
The AIDS Foundation collects that money. I work for government, okay? The AIDS Foundation collects that money. What the AIDS Foundation has done with that money actually is it's set up a new secretary. It's moving to the next phase of its development as an organization. So it's just set up a brand new secretariat, hired staff, an executive director, and a community projects coordinator, and it's just also developed its own 5-year strategic plan. And that's where, so it's ramping up the testing days, ramping up the programs in the schools with girls, to add a program now for boys, and that's where that money is going.
Do we get a condom free?
Oh yes, of course. At my office all the time, we've been giving out free condoms, for years.
My last question, Suzette, and I want to really appreciate your contribution. I know you share, and I said that earlier, you share the office with the current Minister of Health. How satisfied are you with his work, gearing to make yours easier? For example, with the coordination of the HIV program, because it's all about health issues.
Yeah.
Especially I talked about, I didn't want, someone told me, if somebody doesn't want to answer the question, just move on. You know? It was useful. That's why I was asking about the health business.
Yeah.
Concerning those people that are affected or suffering.
Yeah.
What has been your satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your ex-colleague? Let's put that way.
I think, honestly, so far, I think he's done a pretty decent job. He seems to have his finger on the pulse of a number of things. I don't necessarily agree with everything he does, but then that's life. I don't necessarily agree with everything that, the Secretary General does as well. But I think he seems to have a fairly good idea of a broad cross-section of things. I mean, I can only imagine, being the Minister of Health, Social Development, and Welfare. That's a huge portfolio, And if I look at how just those three alone impact the HIV program and and vice versa, and how much work, as program manager I have to do only in the area of HIV in those three fields, I can only imagine, what his task is if he has to look at everything else, including HIV, in those three fields. And it isn't easy. And I don't think he's been there long enough, but I think he's done a pretty decent job so far.
Lady Moses Burton, I want to say thank you for your contribution this morning to the story.
You're so welcome.
I hope you will get wherever you want to go and be so successful. Radio listener, that's what we got for you today. I thank you for listening. This is Breakfast with Terror.
This is the voice of St. Martin.